我肯定得高兴那个，他另外地要做后来，我后来说。
That was something I had never heard from my grandfather before. I came to the nursing home with a piece of paper in my pocket. On it were questions I wanted to ask my 91-year-old grandfather. But I never took the paper out. The conversation did not follow my plan. Still, I learned things I had never known before. That morning, I rode my electric scooter to visit him. He is 91 years old and now lives in a nursing home in a small city in China. I did not bring fruit, milk, or food this time. He has told us many times not to bring more. He cannot eat much now. So today, I brought something else. I brought questions. When I arrived, I first walked around the small garden downstairs. Some elderly people were sitting there and talking, but I did not see my grandfather. So I went inside. When I entered his room, he was still sleeping. I did not wake him up. I just sat there and waited. When he woke up, he recognized me immediately. And, as usual, he said almost the same thing he says every time. If you are busy, you do not need to come just to see me. This is his character. He has always been afraid of troubling other people. Even now, at 91, he still worries about becoming a burden. At first, we talked about the same thing we usually talk about: his health, his sleep, my work. He said after breakfast, he felt dizzy and lay down again. He has high blood pressure and takes medicine every day. Then he brought up something he has mentioned many times before. He wants to go back to the village. He says he can still live there by himself. I understand why he feels this way. He spent most of his life in the countryside, but he is 91 now. No one in the family would feel safe letting him live alone. Now his world is mostly this room, from the bed to the small table at the end of the bed, less than 2 meters. Before I came, I had written down some questions on a piece of paper. I thought I would take it out and ask him one by one. But when I arrived, he was sleeping. Later, he was suddenly woken up by his roommate. The moment came before I was ready, so the paper stayed in my pocket. I never took it out. I just sat beside him and asked what I could remember in our local dialect. Then, little by little, some memories came out. He told me he only studied for about 2.5 years. When he was young, cooking required firewood, so he often went up the mountain to collect it. He also collected pig manure and cow manure to use as fertilizer for the fields. Then he told me something I had never heard before. He once acted as an emperor in a local opera. This surprised me. In my memory, my grandfather was always quiet, practical, and serious. I never imagined him standing on stage playing an emperor. For a moment, I saw another version of him. Not just an old man in a nursing home, not just my grandfather, but a young man I had never known. He also told me how he became an accountant in the production team. At first, He did not want to do it. He felt he had only studied for 2.5 years and was not qualified. But local cadres kept coming to ask him, and his father told him to accept the responsibility. The first year was very hard. He said he worked all day in the accounting office. When he finally finished the books, someone said they were wrong and tore them up. He said his tears almost came out, but he had no choice. He had to do it again. There was also one thing I had misunderstood before. I thought he wanted us to leave the village because our family did not fully belong there. But today, he told me something different. He was born in that village. The reason was simpler. He felt the village was too limited. He wanted his children and grandchildren to go to bigger places. He once said he hoped his descendants could buy homes in bigger cities, even Beijing or Shanghai. He could not go out himself, so he hoped we could. Near the end, he told me again to go back. He said I should not delay my own work. Then he remembered that he needed to take his blood pressure medicine. I helped him take out the medicine and poured him some hot water. After he took it, I left. At the gate of the nursing home, I passed a group of people. From what I heard, they seemed to be discussing funeral arrangements for an elderly resident who had passed away. I did not know the person. I did not know the full story. But after visiting my grandfather, those few words stayed with me. When I came home, I took the paper out of my pocket. It was already wrinkled. Most of the questions on it had not been asked exactly as I had written them. Some questions came out in another form. Some were forgotten. Some felt too heavy to ask. When I listened to the recording again, some parts were hard to hear. Some words were in our local dialect. I had to translate them first into Mandarin in my mind and then into English for this video. Today, I did not get a complete story. I did not even use the paper I had prepared. But I still learned things I had never known before. Maybe family memory is not saved by perfect questions. Maybe it is saved by imperfect visits. One conversation, one voice, one wrinkled piece of paper, and the decision to ask before it is too late.